Yo, what's up, guys? In this video, I have a very special guest with me. His name is Dave. I call him Rave. Nice to meet you, Rave. Now, yeah, and Rave is someone I really love talking about consciousness, letting go, and all this stuff. And we always have amazing conversation. So I thought this time we record it and then put it in the YouTube. How are you doing? How's your day been like?
My day today has been pretty lovely. Just a nice September Sunday day. Sort of just hung out. Yeah.
Are you still doing the Buddhist practice?
Oh yeah.
Are you going to the Buddhist centers?
I am when I can. This weekend I didn't make it because I had some back issues, so I wasn't feeling well. But yeah, when I can make it, I go. And it's been an awesome experience. So there's a Buddhist monastery down a couple towns over, and I've been going since it opened after COVID lightened up a bit. And there's like one monk there, a couple nuns, and I've had the chance to, sit with them and talk with them, that kind of stuff. It's been really cool.
What did you talk about?
Practice, really. So part of what the monk does is host a class Saturday mornings, and he just sort of goes over the Buddhist philosophy. And then, the real special parts for me is when, I'll just catch him in the hallway and I'll just ask him little questions, and, he gives me like personal.
Like what?
This most recent time, he noticed that when I was meditating, I was like swaying a bit. And I was telling him the technique I was doing is, you focus on spaciousness. So I guess like what can happen is, for me, my body just sort of like starts wiggling like a coral reef in the ocean a bit. That's how. And I told him this set of practices I was doing, and he sort of got excited and painted it in a larger picture of practice and where it falls into, other things I can do, and recommended a giant book, which I'm now reading.
Oh, really? What book?
It's called The Path of Purification. It's sort of like
Nice.
a conglomerate of a lot of the early Buddhist teachings. So the Buddha, when he was around, gave a bunch of discourses verbally. It's an oral tradition of before writing. So this is one of the earliest texts that sort of aggregated them all together into a real thick, like pretty much meditation manual.
Speaking of books, I recently went to, I call this a boo-boo shop where they like sell crystals and stuff. You know what I mean? I got this, the Tibetan symbols.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And I also like picked up this book because you said big books. I picked up this book called Course in Miracles. You heard of it?
No, I have not.
No, you haven't? So, what's interesting about this book? This book, I guess, is written by a Christian or something, because they refer like Christ, consciousness. But this book is like super ruthless. Like, yeah, like they like cut, they like remove all the fluff and go straight to the point. Like, there's like lessons. So they're like a student manual, like lessons. And here's the first lesson, right? The thing is, I feel this book is going to be amazing if you know how to read it. Because I feel if you like come with preconceived notions of Christ or God or the Holy Spirit, this book is not going to make that much sense. But if you have like a well-rounded understanding of what it is, like I will show you some of the stuff. Here's, I'm just trying to. Here's a. So look, here's a first exercise, right? The first exercise is, nothing I see in this room, on the street, from this window, in this place means anything. That's it. First exercise into non-duality. Like straight is like going into non-duality. Or lesson 45. He's asking you to realize God is the mind with which I think. I mean, sit and contemplate. I'm like, bro, for like a Christian book, it's very straightforward.
I'd be curious to hear more about that. That's cool.
It's a very good book. But you have to like read it in a certain way.
You know who keeps popping up on my radar from the Christian tradition is Meister Eckhart. If you've heard of that guy.
I've heard that name. Who's he? What does Meister mean exactly?
I'm not too sure. I haven't really delved into this area yet, but he's supposedly, like, they call him a Christian mystic, and I've seen him come up in a bunch of different things I've read.
Is he alive?
No, I think this is an old time guy. I think he was a guy of the Christian tradition who wrote very non-dually type stuff, and so that made him very mystical. But those are the things that we're interested in, right? So I want to someday get around to reading what some of that guy had to write.
You know, I'm coming up with this theory where I feel like there are two kinds of knowledge. I feel we live in two dimensions at the same time. And I call this, one is external dimension and two is internal dimension. And the reason I'm splitting this dimension is because the data in each of the dimension is just different. Like in external dimension, like outside us, you see colors, trees, apple, orange, whatever, right? But when you close your eyes, you don't see those. You're aware, you're aware on like a different set of data itself, like thoughts, sensations, movies, imagination, the beingness, the consciousness, stuff like this.
That's interesting. So do you consider sensation as and like noises, for example, hearing, as being internal or external?
I would consider them being both in internal and external. However, the theories you build on top of the noises is going to differ. Because the quality of noise is going to be, because if I close my eyes and hear a noise, the associations that I put to the noise is in the external world. So if you say a tree, and if I think of a tree, the only reason I'm thinking of a tree is because there's an influence of the external dimension in the internal, right?
So you consider your mind categorizing visual perception as tree as being something out there. Is that what you're saying? For me, I see that very much internal. My brain is making sense of what I'm seeing. Really, these are just thoughts and mental processes happening that are interpreting these light waves that are contacting my eyes and being transmitted to electricity and all that.
Yeah. What I want to, the reason I'm splitting in these two dimensions is because the theory on top of which you build the data, the theories is going to differ. You know what I mean? For example, physics. There are like 4 types of theory that's possible, right? External dimension interacting with external dimension, like physics, or two bodies are interacting. You're trying to like observe and make conclusions. Oh, this is what's happening. And then you have external dimensions interpretation of your internal dimension, like psychology or biology. They try to like cut you up from like the external dimension to understand your internal dimension, right? But then I feel there's the internal dimension on top of internal dimension, which I feel is like very pure spiritual work. You're taking the internal data with like thoughts, sensations, feelings, movies, and on top of that data, you're building theories rather than the data which is present on the external dimension. You feel me?
I think so. Would this map onto like the difference between objective and subjective? So you can study the mind in a very objective way by like what psychology does is study lots of people and make theories.
Yeah.
Or you can do introspection, right, which is much more subjective and watch your own experience unfold and have ideas about what all that means.
Yeah. I feel the objective and subjective, both the dimensions, the reason I call them dimensions is because each dimension has its own objective, subjective worldview, and internal has subjective, objective worldview, you know. I feel like law of attraction and all that stuff is how your internal dimension affects the external dimension, you know, how your thoughts could affect outside. And I feel the reason the confusion is so hard to like understand spiritual stuff is because we try to understand it on the data which is present on the external dimension, you know, rather than introspecting on what is. Like if I close my eyes, I don't see dopamine or serotonin.
Right.
You just don't. Does it mean it's not real? I guess from an external dimensions perspective, it could be real, but in internal dimension, it's not, right. If you're doing spiritual work and if you're thinking in terms of dopamine and serotonin, it's just not gonna. It's a longer path because you just can't experience it. It's a faith. It's a matter of faith.
Right. So you're taking sort of internal dimension. I'm just trying to understand this mapping. Internal dimension is being anything I can be aware of in my present experience.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
External dimension is more of like our knowledge about how things are, right? So maybe the content of thoughts in my present experience. I know something about dopamine, serotonin, but I can't perceive them directly, right? I know it,
exactly.
study it in whatever chemistry,
Yeah,
biology.
and I propose that spirituality is all about is all about understanding the internal dimension.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
building theories on top of the observations that you're seeing within.
You know, I see it as a bit more of stepping back behind theories. So you have this internal dimension and sort of just ceasing the effort of trying to explain it or understand it, but just be it.
Yeah, it's like I feel it's very scientific the way you approach it. Yeah, because you're just making observations. I feel
Yep.
that's the end of the day. That's what you're doing. You're just making observations of what's happening. That's it.
Yeah. As long as you forego the sense of being objective, because that's a very big part of science. But
Yeah,
another big part of science is the rigorous inquiry, data collection, right? So
yeah,
that part very maps on very well. Um, of that, you're really studying, you're a student of your experience at all times.
yeah. I feel at the root, spirituality is that you're just a student of your consciousness. You're like trying to like study consciousness and what is happening, and see, it's so interesting because I wanted to understand what letting go is still, and how do you articulate it in a way because that's something I just want to put a nail in the coffin. Letting go done, so fully explained. Let's just move move on.
Okay, you might
Question
have to
comes.
let go of that idea.
Let go of that idea. I have to hold on to something. Might as well hold on to
Uh,
that. Let go. Okay. Peace, inner peace.
mm.
When I think about what to let go, because I feel you can only let go of stuff that you're conscious that you're holding on to.
Yeah, in my exploration, I mean, I think the subject of letting go is such an interesting one. And
Yeah.
it's as I've dived into spirituality, it's like I keep taking on new and new meanings of what it means to let go. And to me, it's
Yeah.
very intertwined with seeing clearly, like you mentioned. You sort of have to see that you're wrapped up in something in order to have there be space enough to let the letting go happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel letting go has like a pre-requirement of like realizing and also realizing that it's something of your doing, you know like, oh, I'm doing this.
Yeah, there's definitely an identification component to it, right? So take thoughts, for example. Anytime you're not aware that you're thinking, you're just identified and wrapped up with whatever it is you're thinking. I need food, I'm hungry. But as soon as you can see that, right, you can just see that as a thought of like, oh, there's this drama playing out about somebody being hungry, right? Then that's sort of just that's the stepping back and you can let go and just let that thought be a thought, right? And no longer subscribe to the drama of it all. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
that's the piece of like I'm no longer attaching my sense of self to this story about being hungry, right? I'm behind it now in a way.
I think in a sense letting go is all about you're letting go the attachment between you, what you think you are, versus what the thing is have. Like if a thought is, you're letting the thoughts like go, but you're like letting go of the attachment, or you think that, oh, these are my thoughts, you know
Mm.
letting go of that. It's very subtle and it's very nuanced. It's very interesting. Letting go, man, that subject fascinates me a lot.
Yeah, because there's really no, well, you could argue there's an end, like complete enlightenment or whatever. But until you get there, there's just so much. So you let go of big stuff and there's just no shortage of like small little things that you identify with, and you let go of those, there's even smaller things that you identify with, and it just keeps going and going.
I've like done some inquiry, I won't say inquiry, just like observation within. And like the process, what seems to happen is, are you familiar with like an engine, like a 4-stroke engine or something? So there's like petrol, right? This fuel, and there's something called a spark plug, which like basically creates a spark, and then the fuel like goes in, the spark hits the fuel, and the air has the oxygen and starts combustion, and now you have like an engine, right? So I feel the mechanism inside is very similar in the sense of, I feel the fuel is like the sensation. I truly believe like the body itself stores information. I won't say like the body stores information, the body stores sensation, and your mind stores how to interpret the sensation,
Sure. Yeah.
you know? So I feel there's and the initial spark I feel is sparked by a belief that you believe, which you think, oh, this is how I should interpret. And that, for example, if I take a food craving, I have a sensation, and I had a belief that, oh, the sensation is like food craving. So that then it's like summons a thought. Oh, am I hungry right now? I think I am. I can feel the sensation. What do I eat? Oh, I actually want to eat something sugary, to save to satisfy this craving. And this like keeps going. You see, this perpetual cycle, this like endless cycle. And I feel letting go is almost like you're letting go of the way you're perceiving the sensation. I feel if to replace a belief, all you're doing, I feel, is recontextualizing what the sensation is and what you want it to mean. I would like to preface this by saying the goal being, how can I love this moment more than the fantasies about some other moment existing somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Everyone wants to know. Oh, Prem, listen. See, even I'm like, I have a picture. If my life was like this, like this, like this, that's it. I'll be happy. Now, how do I get there? But that thing is existing somewhere in the imagination.
Yeah.
We're always sacrificing the actuality for
That's
something.
that's such an interesting point that you outlined, because I feel like that's a point at which most people don't stop and look about the story about, if I get this, that, and the other thing, then I'll be happy,
Yeah.
right?
But where does the thing exist? Because when you look inside, okay, where is this stuff existing? And you'll notice it exists in the imagination. That it exists in like an ethereal aspect of in your mind. But that doesn't make sense. You see, you're searching something that is abstract at while sacrificing the actual experience, thinking that the abstract is going to be an actual experience at some point in the future or something.
And behaving as if it will bring complete fulfillment. Even though if you ask someone, if you get this, do you think you'll be happy forever? Most people maybe would say no, but the behavior, the intensity with which you pursue those desires often has the flavor of like, this is everything. I need this. Once I get this, then I'll be good, and that just goes totally unexamined. And I heard a great analogy that like, fulfilling your deepest desires, it's revealed that you only got a grain of sand out of the mountain of happiness that was promised by that desire.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just so fleeting. And as soon as you get a great meal that you wanted, your mind is already like, I'm cold, I want this, I
Yeah.
want that, so
Yeah.
fast.
What's the irony of emotions itself? All the you would call high vibration and emotions, energies like happiness, compassion, peace, joy, whatever, gratitude, all of them, what they basically are doing, at any point that you're truly happy or content or compassionate, at that point you're going, whatever this present moment is there, I like this. That's all it's saying. And anything that's lower, like anger, pride, all that's saying is this present. Let's say I hate a pizza. What that actually means is this experience that I'm having, I don't prefer this experience. I actually prefer some other experience that's in my mind more than what is actually given here. And I want that. So I hate this one, is what it's saying.
Yeah, it's creating this sort of pushing, pulling, like grinding, right? Of like, I want that, and I'm gonna push away what's here, trying to like
Yeah.
move that way. I read an interesting piece recently that, I've often thought that the sense of self gives rise to all of these things we're talking about, like the desire for what's not here or the aversion to what is here. But this piece sort of framed it as that these two things can't really be separated, that the sort of inclination to want or the inclination to get rid of is how the self knows it's like a thing, how it crystallizes itself. And so
That's a
the
very good
self knows
point.
its own existence through this energy of desiring and pushing away. Whereas these
Damn,
other
that's such a
states,
good
like,
point. Who said that?
it was in a random piece I read
Okay.
related to the Buddhist studies class, out of
Mm-hmm.
Common Ground.
Damn, that's such a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so those other states you mentioned, love, acceptance, gratitude, generosity, they don't need to have a sense of self. And if you're really dwelling deeply in those states, it's just an acceptance, right? So the sense of self can very tangibly dissolve into that larger space of that accepting emotion. And
Yeah.
that brings complete like peace and
Yeah.
bliss, all those things you mentioned.
One of the things that really like blew me away I was like looking within the, it blew me away that inside us, inside everyone, at least inside me, there's like a voice that feels constant throughout the times I was growing up, right? There's like one frame that is like the same frame somewhere inside. That's a constant, right? So right now, whatever I think, oh, I should probably do this. It's probably a good idea. All that stuff, right? It sounds like a, a thing that I'm thinking. But once if I do like some meditation or breathing exercises, and after like a state change, I think look back and like, wait, why was I thinking that? I wouldn't even think that. In every state, I think a certain way, or I choose to become aware of certain kinds of thoughts. Let me put it that way. And I realized my entire ego, the entire frame is not something that's constant. Depending on my state, you get like a flavor of ego. So if I ask what is even constant, I really don't know. It's crazy.
And that need for consistency puts so much pressure on things, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I perceive, if I'm not examining my experience, I'm not quite sure where it is. I know it's here somewhere, this sense of self that's stable, constant, persists over time. And there's such a need to preserve this sense of consistency. This is like the issue of cognitive dissonance that comes
Yeah.
about when people, when it's pointed out to people that like, oh, something you claim to believe is inconsistent with the way you behaved in the past, or like these two behaviors contradict, or these two beliefs you hold contradict. People get very uncomfortable about that because there's this strong need to perceive everything about your being as being sort of consistent uh, in logic or whatever. And so part for me, the realization that there's no real solid stability or continuity to self eases this need for everything to be consistent. Sometimes there's these desires, sometimes there's these thoughts, and there's just stuff that happens, and you don't need to always make a coherent storyline out of all of it. you know
Damn. That's such a, yeah. You know what's also funny? Our entire society is designed so that your awareness, or the reason I split them into two dimensions, internal and external, is because your awareness can only be in one of them at a time. You can either be aware of the internal one or the external one, because they both fundamentally deal with two different styles of data, not the same data. So you have to like think literally differently when you're like dealing with each data. You know what I mean? You can't think the external dimension in terms of thoughts, feelings, emotions. You can't think the internal dimension on like, blood vessels, is like blood going this way, serotonin, stuff like that.
It's
And that's
we've discussed before a bit where what you're referring to as external really is just always in the content of thought, whereas anything internal is stepping outside the content of thought, right? As soon as you're outside the content of thought, you're no longer pointing to the past or the future or concepts or anything. You're just right
yeah,
here.
yeah,
As soon as you're inside thoughts, you can only be in the past or the future with things that are abstract and
yeah.
concrete.
Our entire society is designed so that most of our awareness is spent outside, externally.
And you can see that very directly as a sort of projection of how we think, right? Thoughts create these buildings because we think in straight lines. And so you get these buildings that have straight lines and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, of course. It's what we get on this in this external world is just totally a reflection. The stuff we build is a reflection of how we think. Absolutely. Our concepts are just boxes. So we build boxes all over the place, right? I had this powerful reflection when I was in an airplane, and you see this continuous landscape where, nature is just flowing. And then there's each little block that we live in are these tiny little squares, there's squares everywhere, rectangles. It's just such a projection of our minds, like you can, in some way you can look down and see like the human mind built that. These thoughts right here, how I like to categorize things, is the same thing that built those structures down there.
Yeah. I feel entire spirituality is like a double-edged sword, because you're using a language where literally you almost have to like reinterpret it. It's like how what everything feels like. All of spirituality just gives you puzzle pieces, and then you have to like look within, make direct observations in this with your direct experience. Oh, here's thought, here's sensation, here's stuff, and then you have all these puzzle pieces, and then you like slowly put them on together by yourself. Because it's a difference between pointing at the moon and looking at the moon and then talking about the moon, right?
Well, the goal of spirituality is just to look directly at the moon, right?
Yeah.
So
And
you
you
get all,
cannot. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a very typical or traditional trajectory for people to strive in spirituality, right? You treat it like you treat every other thing we do, which is striving, putting forth effort, trying to make progress. Um, and that's all valuable because in a sense, it like opens your mind, and this is how people frame it, right? It makes you in a more open state or whatever, so that when you're available to have that sudden realization. But that sudden realization always has the character, as it's described, of giving all that up, right? Especially in Zen, they describe like the moment where the master gives you that final paradox, that final puzzle that is impossible to solve. And so the mind's trying, and it finally gives up. And then that moment of giving up is just the opening into how things always already were.
Yeah. I actually I want to describe like a letting go method that kind of like builds on top of all of this. And I want to like tell the audience that this letting go method is, you're letting go through understanding, all right, and realizing. Okay. So I feel the entire method entails with your goal being, how much can you accept the isness of whatever this moment brings. All right. Accepting, your goal is to like love this moment as much as you can. Okay. And you are welcoming anything that you can't control and letting go of anything you are controlling. Because think about it, if the idea of control even comes because it's trying to like take you somewhere else, right? So if any thought pops up, it's probably because it's already saying, this thought is like trying to take me somewhere else, right? You're letting go of anything that's taking you away from the moment and welcoming anything that is you can't control. I was reading this book by Byron Katie called Loving Waters, and there was this moment where Byron Katie was just sitting outside, and she was like super angry woman or something, and she's just sitting outside, right? And there's like this just dusty wind just hits her face, and she finally goes, "Ah, there's nothing I can do about this. Might as well accept it, you know." So there's an uncomfortable experience, but she's welcoming the uncomfortable experience, but she's letting go of her idea that this experience should be something else.
Sure. You can let go of that without. So one of the things I think, like I described, I've gained new understandings of what it means to let go over time. And for me,
Mm,
one of the things that has always been something to work with is this idea of letting go being a motion of pushing away. So in this example, you could be sitting outside with something unpleasant. And as soon as mindfulness arises and I notice that I'm having an aversive reaction to this, there's sometimes the tendency to like build aversion to that aversive reaction and say, oh, I know I shouldn't be reacting like this. I need to get this out of here so I can let go. Right. But really, what I've seen, the deeper part of letting go is noticing your reaction and allowing that too, to say,
yeah,
like, this is unpleasant. I've noticed that I'm being aversive to it. And now I'm just at peace with that whole process. And
yeah,
yeah. And as you stay there, this is something you can see directly. As you stay there, the aversion dissipates, because I think aversion really needs, as an empowering energy, that identification of, I need to get this out of here. And when you take that out of it, with dispassionate mindfulness, then it's allowed to dissolve. But if you take it out and say, I need to get this aversion out of here, you're just sort of layering back into more aversion, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So
Man, that's something I've researched a lot. Attachment and aversion. I feel there are two different aspects of like the same mechanism. And I actually was doing the self inquiry. We spoke about this before. But I looked at the sensation and I asked, is this sensation really asking me to be aversive? If so, what aspect of the sensation is really asking me to be aversive? You know, I, I'm just curious. I really want to know. And I just looking at the sensation as it is. Like, okay,
yeah.
where in this experience, in a very visceral way, what about this visceral sensation is telling me to like go away somewhere? And you realize there's nothing about the experience itself, the sensation itself, that tells you to like do something. It's about how you are interpreting the sensation to be that is dictating your action.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the sensation doesn't say, oh, I don't want to be here. It's you who says, I don't want the sensation to be here. So the letting go method I'm talking about is you're welcoming the sensation, but you're letting go of the idea that, oh, I don't want the sensation to be right here. So you're letting go of all of that, because all of that is something you're doing and is not inherently in the sensation. There's nothing inherent about any sensation which says like you should do something else.
Yeah.
It's all about how you are like the I feel like it's like the rose colored glasses. Like how are you, what glasses are you wearing to look at the sensation that really dictates the color of the sensation? If the sensation itself is like whatever, but if you're looking at it in a rose colored glasses, it looks pink.
Yeah. Or, it looks nasty, right? If you don't want it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm trying to map it onto Buddhist philosophy, what they would have to say. So,
I think I would call it feeling tone, right?
yep. Yeah. Well, yeah. So there's layers that they distinguish there. So they have, sense contact generates a quality of that. And the quality is the feeling tone. Like, is this pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral?
Yeah,
And that's actually, that being there isn't an issue. what's an issue is when you have this sense of self that latches on to saying like, this is pleasant, I want to hold on to it, I want to keep it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
push it away if it's unpleasant. But you can actually be with pleasant or unpleasant things with, stable mindfulness, and observe a lot of things about it, like how it's fleeting, it's not satisfactory, it's changing, and that it doesn't really have anything to do with your sense of self.
I think it comes down to the realization that unpleasant sensations, there's no sensation that's unpleasant, you know. Unpleasant is almost like an ego's interpretation, because what does the unpleasant mean? Ego at some point went, you know what, I would rather prefer some other sensation compared to this.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? Because it's hard to know if you have complete dissolution of self, will feeling tone still be? I'm not sure. I haven't been there.
I think a sensations would be, but I feel the way you interpret it, because even I always try to ask who is doing the sensation, uh, like uh, who's asking, who's interpreting the sensation, kind of like
Well,
goes there on it. But then it's very hard to, like, I don't know, man, this me, I guess.
here's a really good Buddha story. So apparently, Buddha had like two really close friends, and supposedly they both died in like a week of each other.
Damn.
And Buddha had a really famous quote that one of my teachers always says, which is like, it feels as though the sun and moon have fallen out of the sky, and isn't it incredible that I still don't suffer over this? Implying that like he could feel the pain of loss, but that his relationship to it was such that there was no suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I find that one to be very powerful, because it's not like you're trying to get rid of this unpleasantness, the things that we would prefer not to be there, right? And there's another saying that's like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Similar idea that you can't wash everything that you experience as being neutral, but you can develop a relationship with what's unpleasant, such that you're not
That's
suffering.
more. Yeah,
You're allowing it.
I feel suffering is like a byproduct of you wanting something else, but something in the present, but not able to change the moment to something else. You like want like an experience B that is not this experience. Let's call this experience A. You want experience B more than experience A, but you can't make the shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at extreme cases, right? If a loved one dies, you're just totally wrapped up in a state where you would prefer your current state not to be, but you can't do a thing about it, right? Oftentimes we perceive that we can do something about it. Like if I'm hungry, I can go get food. But there's these times in life that it'll throw at you, which is just the utter absurdity that you can't do anything about it. That's a very hard place for a human mind to be, I think.
Yeah,
Just
man. Yeah, I find that incredibly fascinating. I feel what everybody wants end of the day is to like live like a happy life, I guess, which I feel involves recontextualizing how they interpret certain experiences. And I feel in recontextualize, like for example, suffering. For me, suffering makes me go into apathy. I become lazy. But for David Goggins, who's like this, like, I don't know what even to call him, like athlete, or like he was a Navy SEAL, and he's like, his motto is "You can't hurt me." So if he gets the sensation of like apathy, he goes, you know what, time to work harder. Yeah, and he pushes himself physically a lot.
yeah. And I've tried that mentality myself, and it generates a weariness. Like,
Yeah,
how long can you be the tough guy for?
Yeah,
If you try to power through with ego, the world sort of erodes you like a
there
stream
is.
on a sharp rock,
Yeah,
just wears you down.
yeah, exactly. That's where I feel it's a more nuanced understanding. Are you familiar with Abraham Hicks?
Vaguely, that name's familiar. I don't remember though.
She's like, she talks about law of attraction. She's the one who coined law of attraction. And this is like, I bought like her cards. These are like affirmation cards in the in the boo shop. I bought three things. And one of the concepts is to like becoming aware of the essence of the thoughts. You know, I feel that's the kind of stuff you're pointing to, right? If the essence is, if you have the essence of being aversive, even if you tough it out, the essence will still be there and it could even grow stronger, right?
Yeah, the thing with toughing it out is that you're framing things in a way that there's just conflict, right? You're creating the conflict, you're embracing the conflict. Um, and conflict is exhausting. Conflict is a form of suffering, right? If you're feeling like
Yeah,
you're always at battle, not even with other people, but yourself, right? That's heavy stuff to carry.
I feel there's an inherent assumption that people make that they take something as a given, but they don't question why this is the case. Like, why should we be rich? You know, or the thing is, most of our choices are so irrational in nature. Animalistically, everything is designed to like increase our survival, and that's a very irrational choice. It just has a desire to survive, and everything else is like designed to increase our chances of survival. But it all feels so objective, you know, like the reality itself. Oh, the reality itself is designed to make me want to do this. Nah, there's like an attachment, like a very strong animalistic attachment to like survive.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if you cast it in that lens, you can see that craving and attachment is very much a natural process. I mean, we're talking about all natural processes, but it's the one that binds you up into a knot of suffering, right?
Yeah,
And it need not be so. Um,
you
but it,
suffer when when you feel you're not surviving, when you feel
yeah,
your chances of, when you feel you're on walking on a path which is decreasing your sense of survival or chances of survival.
yeah. And one image I like about what spirituality is it's going against the stream of self-interest and going with the stream of nature, of the larger process of what is, and letting go of what I think should be for me, that whole thing, just sort of letting go of that.
Yeah, i I feel nature, I feel nature itself doesn't how do I put, doesn't desire any particular state of consciousness, you know. It's probably just going with the flow. Like it's like nature is never attached to the four seasons. Like it's autumn, fall.
Yeah, I mean, when I say nature, it's pretty much another way of just saying what is, right? And so when you're really honed in on what is, it's just like stuff spontaneously happening, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, and so you can see the movements of nature as being energized by desire. Everything, even like you put a plant by the window and it's going to bend towards the light, you know, even something as subtle as that. But nature itself, just as being what is, and totally just allowing all of that to happen as a fulfillment of itself, right? The desire is just part of that larger process of unfolding and happening.
Yeah, I don't feel it's wrong to like have a desire to survive. I feel we get messed up when our when we think when we like design our life around that. I feel the entire thing about spirituality is like undoing the. I feel you're playing the game in a very passive way. I think Alan Watts talks about that, right? You're still playing the game of life, but it's not like you're in the race. You're almost like a meta. It's like you're a guy watching you yourself play the race.
You become the race.
Come the race.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting, right? So just like we were talking about, unpleasant stuff doesn't go away for fully enlightened people. And neither do desires. But you start to see desires as just clouds that come and go, and you don't need to do anything about them. I often talk about the book I Am That, which is conversations with Nisargadatta Maharaj from
Yeah. No,
the,
I've read that book. I think he just said something like I think someone else, Ramana Maharishi, I think his name, which I think is his teacher. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah. Or he says is like ask who I am, keep investigating in and it'll be enlightened.
yep.
But
And so
yeah.
it's pretty clear that this guy sees things the way they are. I mean, he's just a fountain of wisdom. And he says stuff like, of course I have desires, but I immediately recognize it as being something that's not me, and I don't need to do a thing about it, you know?
Yeah, I think you know what? It is the difference between being attached to the content of the desire versus the actuality of desire, and loving the actuality of desire but not like participating because the content of the desire itself has a motivation that this moment is not right, I want something else. This is what the content of desire asks. But the sensation and the happening of desire itself has no such agenda. It's like an aspect of this consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another important point that I keep it close to, which is pay less attention to the content, pay more attention to the movement, the energy, right? So when you get
Yeah.
content, that's what some like Taoism calls the 10,000 things, right? There's just so much content, could be infinite what you can think about. But in terms of the stuff that can enter your brain and at the level of, is it a thought? Is it a desire? Is it an emotion? Now you've simplified it a lot, right? And the way in which it moves is much simpler than analyzing the content of thought also. Um, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of reassuring that you only have to work at that level because it's a lot simpler.
Yeah, I
And
feel. Yeah. No, go on.
when you see the mind, the ways that it moves, you start to get more familiar with that. You
Yeah.
learn things sitting on the ground in your room that you see in when you're in all kinds of situations, right? You don't need to actually be surrounded by people in X and Y situation to know like, oh, this is moving through my mind right now. I've already seen this, you know.
Yeah. I think I'm going to change the channel here a little bit. Today I kind of like figure out in my dreams how to lucid dream. Okay. So I'm in my dreams, right? And then what I do is basically I count my fingers. And if I see 6 fingers, I know I'm dreaming.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of
So
fun.
yeah. Because I usually have pretty very vivid dreams. I'm very like I can very consciously see my dreams very well. But then after I wake up, I forget it if I don't write it down. I tried writing it down. It's just so hard writing something just after I woke up. I can barely understand anything or even type anything. You know what I mean?
It becomes work after a while, that's
Yeah. And I'm
the
like,
best
I can't
things.
even talk properly. And I'm like, this happened.
You only have like a couple minutes at most
Yeah,
before
exactly. So I'm in this dream, right? And I'm looking at my fingers. Oh, I count 6 fingers. Everything feels real. All right. But I intuitively know that all of this is a dream. Because I'm seeing 6 fingers, real life has 6 fingers. And I'm like, fuck, I know I'm losing dreaming, you know?
that sounds like a good one because there's a spectrum of how solid the dream is, and if you can realize it's when it gets real loose, in my experience, it's easier to notice because things are kind of wacky, but you're also hazy, right? You're not very clear. But when the dream's really solid and you have that moment of like, oh, something's off, now I'm awake in a solid dream.
Yeah.
Well,
And I sat there for a moment. Oh, let's see. let's see whether I can become aware that all of this is like my imagination.
Yeah.
Which was the case. I intuitively know, okay, this is a dream. Everything here is my imagination. But it still didn't feel like it. And I was wondering, okay, what can I do to like realize the fact that all of this is my imagination? Because it didn't feel like it. It felt like this. There is me, there is you, the sense of separateness, right? But I intuitively know everything is like my imagination.
So many analogies to spirituality, right? Of like,
Right.
I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, yet it feels so compelling that this is a self. Um, yeah, and it's just like the same element of faith you take when you realize you look at something in a dream that sets you off to realize I'm dreaming. You have to sort of hold to that and keep that faith, even though everything else seems real and people are going to behave towards you as if it's real. Um, you better make sure you're dreaming. The reason I stopped, it's kind of a funny story, is because I once, uh, like college, I drank too much and I got up in the middle of the night and I did my little dream check and I, for some reason, thought I was dreaming, but I was actually awake. And so I like pissed somewhere I shouldn't have gone.
Oh
And
no.
people were upset. And after that, I was like, okay, I need to keep my grasp on reality.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't try to jump out a window and fly or something.
Dude, I was doing crazy stuff in my dream. And I remember I was convincing my like childhood friend that all of this is like a dream, that I'm dreaming. Because look, I'm telling him, look, I have 6 fingers. This is a dream. And I'm convincing him to like go away somewhere. But I'm still like, it's like this. And it's like I'm telling you, look, I'm dreaming. Oh, you,
Yeah.
me, everything is like my dream. Because look, I have 6 fingers. Like, we have to like leave. And he was like staying there. Oh my god, what about the consequences? But I said, look, there are no consequences. This is a dream, man. None of this matters. You know? And I like woke up and I was so sad because I'm like, what if like dream is like another dimension? You know what I mean? It like gives me access to like another dimension and some other dimension where it is actually real for them. I just like mess their life up, you
Yeah.
know?
I guess we can't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Not my problem. Yeah.
my favorite one ever. So like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but you can sort of train yourself to have them more often, right? And so, and you do that through journaling or being vigilant about doing your sleep checks while you're awake so that you condition that habit,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And so there was a period where I was doing it pretty intensely and having lots of dreams, and they were very clear. And the clearest one was like, this dream was clear. This is why it's called lucid, right? It was just razor sharp clarity of being in a room, talking to somebody. And I had the same experience. Like this guy was like talking to me like it was normal. And it was a very formal like situation. And I just like insisted. I said something of, oh, what I discovered is none of my dream characters could ever tell me what date it is. So I'd ask them, what's today's date? And they would like always avoid the question.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Yeah. And it eventually boiled down to like, this guy acknowledged that we were in the dream. He's like, all right, the gig is up. And he was talking to me as if he was a part of my brain that I couldn't access at the moment, like my brain talking to me.
Oh
Uh,
my god.
yeah, just like the trippiest stuff ever. It's so much fun.
Then what happened? What did he say you? What did he tell you?
Uh, I don't remember like too much. I remember the basic conversation was like, I asked him what his name was. He told me that his name. And I was like, since this is a dream and you're me, did I already know your name? And he said, yes, but it's in a part of your brain that you can't access right now, or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was just
And
this.
that you're actually dreaming all that up is insane.
Yeah.
Thing is, here's the thing I want to really understand. If I'm in a lucid dream, yeah, how would I know that I'm in a dream? How to realize the fact that I'm in a dream?
There's, like you said, you count your fingers. There's just little stuff that's very systematic.
No, I get that. Even if you like realize this is a dream, it still feels so real.
Yeah.
How do you realize this is my imagination and what implications does it have? Like, can I just change it? Can I fly? I don't know.
Depends how
Let's
strong
see.
it is.
Yeah. You know what? It's crazy that this is even a possibility.
Yeah.
The
But
fact that you can like You're first of all imagining something so real that's indistinguishable from reality. The fact that it's even possible is crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like surfing, right? It's such a delicate balance, but when you
Okay.
nail it, it's fun. And yeah, I've had ones like when I was at my peak with it, I just total control, right? It's like I said, jump out a window, you could fly, and it feels like you're flying. Like the sensation in your ears, like you're moving through space, or you're, making somebody appear or whatever.
One sensation that I don't know, I think many people experience the sensation of like falling. It always feels like I'm falling into my bed, or like I trip and I fall, but I fall into my bed. My entire body like reacts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think now that I don't practice as much, some the stuff that like cues me to dreaming is like really unpleasant dreams of like, okay, this seems a little too intense to be real. And then I sort of like come out of it a bit. Um, yeah. Especially the ones like you're being chased by whatever people who want to kill you. And so you just stop and like, okay, go ahead. This is a dream, And sometimes that pain can feel real.
Really?
It's not fun either. Yeah. There's,
This is not a dream after all. No.
yeah. And since I started meditating a lot, there were flashes of it. It hasn't happened lately, but like notice I'm dreaming and just start paying attention to my body sensations. That's what I mean.
Yeah. That's what I want to try. I want to try meditation when I'm dreaming.
Yeah, you can do it. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Yeah. I feel I'm always so caught up in the moment. Or like self-inquiry. I feel I just I feel if you're aware enough in the sensations within, because I in my dream it's very hard to become aware of the sensations within me. Something I've
Yeah,
noticed.
and I think that could be a reflection of it's not our habit to do it when we're awake either. We're so lost in what's happening. That's no different in a dream. You just have to, the more you condition your mindfulness, this is what I saw. The more I started meditating, it's okay. Now it's a habit. Like when I'm dreaming, the mind is just the mind, and so your habits are still there. And okay, now I'm back at the body. This is the trippy stuff that like the Tibetans talk about of like when you die, your habits are still there. So, they talk about all these crazy afterlife things. But if you're still craving for sense experience, then you're just reborn as whatever. But if you have all that conditioning to like mindfulness and be at peace, then you're sort of just resting in the afterlife and bliss or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one word I really like is like understanding like the nature of stuff. Oh, what is the nature of this desire? Like actuality, like what is the nature and touch, color, smell, literally the raw experience of this, without any like biases like thoughts, sensations, which I feel is a second order phenomenon.
That's a very useful state of mind. Investigation is one that's mentioned often in Buddhism as being supportive of liberation.
I feel investigation is like one of the only ways. I feel even all meditation is leading up to you where you are accidentally or deliberately investigating, putting in a state of mind where it's investigation is just easy. Because some thing is in some state of mind, investigation is just not easy. For example, I take cold showers. The way I take cold shower is I take a hot shower, but in the end, I just like turn it up all cold and I start counting. So I just start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm.
And it's so hard to do self-inquiry at that state of mind because you're so busy counting, because everything in your body wants to like go away. The only thing that's keeping you there is that me counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and seeing how long I can let go. But then
Yeah.
also doing like a self-inquiry or trying to like understand the nature, I just can't.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Because there's this larger balance. This is something I've been feeling too. I mean, we've talked about these states of mind that lead to suffering, the desiring things that aren't here, trying to push away things that are here. And the thing that comes with that is that you can't see clearly when you're wrapped up in those things, right? It's like tunnel vision. You're either locked in on what you
Yeah.
locked in on what you don't want. And so I mean, this is like the beautiful first chapter of the Tao Te Ching. It says like truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. And so
Wow.
right? This is the same move from intensely craving something as tunnel vision to just like curiosity as being this open space where you can just see way more clearly.
Yeah, I think that's a point which I feel is something I have to like be stressed on. Is because the thing is the desire itself, it changes you. Even the thing that you think is a constant within you is like an illusion, and it's actually a reaction to a desire. Like most of my thoughts are just a reaction rather than like something originating from like nowhere, you know. Most of the thoughts I'm thinking are just like reactions to stuff I'm feeling or I'm interpreting or I'm seeing, you know.
Yeah.
And when the wrong desire comes, it literally like what I think is consistent within me is actually not. I'm actually my literally what I call it my state of being, even my ego, what I think is me is also changing. Like desire changes everything, even you, even who you are, who you think you are. That's why, you know, finally, this is why I get why people had values or principles that they lived by. Yeah, isn't that bizarre that some guy would like write down, oh, this is my 12 principles that I'm supposed to live by, and everyone like creates this because desire itself like transforms ego and who you are.
Sure. A real lovely thing from the Buddhist philosophy. How does it go? Views, the way you see, creates, gives rise to thoughts. Thoughts give rise to speech to actions, actions to habit, and habit is character.
Buddhism has that.
Yeah, I think that's sort of, I mean, that might come directly from a Buddha quote or whatever, but that's sort of like the path that they outline, is that the way you see impacts your thoughts and intentions, flows to speech, flows to action. And
I have
then,
a very similar thing as well, where it's like this action, which is like a where you have like what is the meaning that is called beliefs, beliefs to like feelings, feelings to thoughts, thoughts to actions. So belief is triggering a feeling that calls forth other thoughts, which are manifesting into an action.
yeah.
And
And it's
all of
all,
letting go process just like backtracking from the action. You're trying to be conscious of what thoughts are causing this action.
sure,
Mindfulness, I call. Once you're mindful of thoughts, you are mindful of what emotions are causing these thoughts or what sensation are causing these thoughts. I call it sensations, the feeling tone, basically. What are the tone of these thoughts? When I'm aware of what are tone of these thoughts, then I feel you can like self-inquire. Why is it that I'm interpreting this tone to be this way? What about this tone is making me want to interpret this way? Literally.
yeah. And people talk about this type of backtracking when you're lost in experience and all of a sudden you realize you're suffering, something sucks. And then you
Yeah.
stop and be like, okay, what's going on here? If you're, if you believe the philosophy, right? Okay, there should be clinging somewhere. Let's see, like, what's going on? What am I holding on to? And then you start looking around your experience like that. Something's
Yeah.
unpleasant. How am I relating to it? All that kind of stuff.
I feel all pain does is says that you want something else more than what is right now. And the higher the pain, the more intense the desire is.
Yeah, I mean, and but you have the more than one way to relate to pain, right? There's a whole spectrum. Pain, I can't conjure. There's a Rumi poem about like pain is like calling out to go deeper or something like that. Pay attention, like pleasure puts us to sleep, pain wakes us up. Pain's not a call to do something, it's a call to pay more attention, look more closely.
Yeah. I think it's all about an underlying motivation of a person preferring something as real as to something that they call as maya or illusion or falsehood. You're preferring truth rather than falsehood. That's it. I feel the entire letting go is you're preferring truth more than falsehood, and you're letting go of the falsehood and you're inviting more truth. That's like the entire Now what is false and what is true? I really have to look within. Okay, is this something that is happening right now, or something happening in the imagination, or is it what is? I think what is true. Anything that's not what is not true. Like the actual, that's a crazy part, right? Because the thoughts are both what is, what's happening in this moment, right? But the content of thoughts are not happening in the moment. You see?
Yeah, the stories are not, they don't ever line up because the stories are fixed. Like we said, the concepts are rigid, they're static, they're dead. Life is always alive and fluid and changing, moving. And so it's this mismatch, right? You're trying to like capture a river in a bucket. You're trying to put whatever peg into the wrong frame, right? It's just not going to work. And it's a grinding suffering.
Yeah, and I think the problem is the present moment, the what isness is so fluid. There's nothing concrete to like hold on to.
Yeah. And you're part of that flowing. So there's
Yeah,
no one to hold on either.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's trying to like hold on to like a river.
And so with that analogy, the image that really captivates me sometimes is like suffering being like trying so hard to hold on to the water, right? And like
Yeah.
gripping hard and watching the water fall out from your hand and lamenting about it. And then, sort of releasing into the river and being a lovely experience.
It's more like, yeah, the river is trying to hold on to the river itself.
Yeah, it's a whirlpool, right? Very twisted up energy, contracted.
It's a river trying to like hold, yeah.
Yeah. And this
You know,
is
you know what's funny? If you think, if you think, you know what's funny? The implication of it are so crazy. Like if you think the content of the thoughts is falsehood, and when you look within your ego, you realize you also exist in a content.
yeah, sure.
There's nothing contextually real about an ego.
Yeah, the observer is always part of the observed. Krishnamurti type.
Yeah.
But
Man,
yeah,
Krishnamurti is someone who got so many things right. And it's crazy too. He just spent all his time just teaching this, which I understand honestly, like 50 years just going around the world, saying the same things.
yeah,
You know what's insane? Like how much all the spiritual traditions just line up on the fundamental truth.
that is very interesting. I do like that. I do like studying. So my approach to this is sort of like I heard advice and it seems trustworthy that when you sit down to practice, take one method that works for you. Don't window shop methods, because one method is designed to have you do all of its different things and only those things to sort of go to the goal or whatever. And I buy into that for the depth of it. But in terms of what you consume intellectually, I really enjoy this breadth of sampling from different traditions to see how people are really
Yeah.
using words to talk about the same thing, which is an
Yeah.
experience. And so it's like sort of
And they articulate it so differently as well, which I feel it's like an art by itself, you know. It's a
yeah,
very
it sort of, and Alan Watts has great things to say about
man.
that core experience of awakening. The person who undergoes it has no choice but to express it in words using the tools that are available given that person's culture. So if you're immersed in a Christian culture, for example, and you have this unity experience where you are the universe, right? You're going to come out of that and be like, I am Jesus Christ. And people are going to have big problems with that, you know?
You know, that's even if Jesus, you know, even if Jesus Christ came and said, you know what, I'm actually the son of God, he would be in
Yeah.
like big trouble.
They didn't
Like,
like him either.
yeah, crucify the you're God, crucify him, man.
Exactly. But if you say that in India, they'll say, welcome to the club. What took you so long to get here? You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, even like this book, this Course in Miracles, I feel it's a very who wrote it? It's an edition by Dr. Helen. I don't know what he's. I don't know whether it's a Christian or not, but this book is written in a very Christian way. but the words in it, if just you interpret it properly, it's so good. Like one of this says about healing, right? Which is so crazy because you could be so synonymous to letting go as well. You're connected to the concept of letting go, the vibe. Healing thus becomes a lesson in understanding. And the more you practice it, the better teacher and learner you become. You know?
Mm.
And it's like, and denial is as total as love. You cannot deny part of yourself because the rest will seem to be separate and therefore without meaning. Like what you're saying, right? The denial is as total as love. Like the context of denial, the isness of denial is as equal to love. I, yeah, I feel because denial is love. You're loving something else so much that you're feeling denial of this moment. It's all love directed in different capacities and in different directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of a contraction of love, a sort of more limited view of it, where love in the most inclusive sense is just equally open and accepting of everything.
Yeah, you can only ask. The thing is, I always ask myself, why should I love waters? Why not something else? But then you realize what else can you love, It's nothing. There's nothing else you could actually really love. If you want to love truth, if you love what, then you have to like love waters. And there's nothing else you could love. But that's all there is there.
Yeah. Or you get wrapped up in your thoughts about what could be, what should be. You know,
Yeah,
I'll love it if it goes this way and this way. And,
that's interesting.
setting yourself up for being dissatisfied. That's something I've been sitting with recently, of like sitting with the core sense of dissatisfaction that runs through so much of experience, you know. And it's impermanent. So you don't always feel dissatisfied with things, but very often it's there, right? If I have a sense of separateness, like I'm a separate individual and there's stuff out here, then there's things that I'm not, right? I'm not these things. And therefore there are things that I can go out and acquire. So I feel like I'm deficient or unsatisfied, dissatisfied. Very easy for that to arise. And when that does arise, what I've noticed, so many desires and stories arise with that about how to resolve that.
And yeah,
Right?
what's the problem there? Is I feel like ego is like playing with like a light switch. It like puts you in like a moment of unconsciousness where you just like blank out and you have this desire now and like turns on your consciousness.
So fast.
Yeah, and it feels like one fluid motion.
Yeah.
Like the food craving, the light switch just goes off and now your body unconsciously act and now there's food in front of you and it's like on
Yep.
and just hides in the darkness.
Immediately it goes to what's next, what's next, what's
Yeah,
next.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You hear this in conversations with people. Like imagine you accomplish some great thing. You got a job or whatever. Or you finish school. Finish school is a great one. Everyone's congratulations, congratulations. What's next? What's
Yeah.
always like that's just how the mind is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you start to realize you're always in that mode. Something nice happens, something pleasurable happens. All right, what's next? You know? Yeah, so it's like this sense of dissatisfaction and the desires arise together, that they're not separate, and that you can watch those desires without getting lost in the stories about how to resolve this sense of dissatisfaction, because you start to realize those desires never deliver on that promise, that this is something that's always going to be around, the dissatisfaction,
Yeah.
right? You don't buy into those desires, but you also don't shove them away. That's something that I started doing, like I don't want these things here. I don't believe them. I want them out. But you can bring the love to that too. Like, oh, this desire's back. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, loving is just accepting the isness of the desire and letting go of anything that is taking you away from that isness of the desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I was saying. we're gonna end this interview in a couple of minutes. I won't call it
Yeah,
an
that's
interview.
good.
I call
Yeah,
call it
it's
a
almost
talk.
good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it is very interesting of all religions in their own different way, kind of like line up with the same thing.
I love that. I think
Yeah,
that gives some, for me, a sense of there being a universal truth underlying all this, the differences that we see, all the ways that religions evolve as a function of being an institution that needs to survive, and they
yeah,
take on all these things that make them look different, but at the core there's this experience, right? And you don't need to use words to describe it. Most people object to that, but it feels real, right? It feels true that that exists. I
yeah.
find it.
And that's super fascinating. Yeah, man, there are some people, I think as the society evolves, I think the progression is how much of your mental process can you, how much of your mind can you still use, but also having like a program that can artfully discern between what is true and what is false on in a very continual basis. I feel this is what Jiddu Krishnamurti did. He had like a level of mental activity, but also had like this program where he could like very artfully discern, masterfully discern, okay, this is true, this is false, this is true, this is falsehood.
Yeah, it's really using your mind as a tool and not letting it drive the cart. All right, people
Yeah.
say your mind makes a much better servant than master. Your mind
You
is
feel
really
in
not
future schools will have all this?
what?
You feel in future schools will have like this, where like because you need 10,000 hours, right? Or at least like 1,000 to 1,000 hours of just like mindfulness, hardcore.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that touches on that question that we sometimes talk about: is are more and more people starting to realize that desires aren't fulfilling and that mindfulness is a better way? I don't know. I don't know if there's a good way to address it.
You know
Um,
what's funny about that? Every rich guy goes, "Oh, this didn't bring me pleasure," and everyone goes, "You know what? When I get there, I will feel pleasure. You don't worry about that."
yeah,
You know what I mean? Yeah.
it is interesting how utterly convincing it is, those desires. I mean,
Why is it convincing? That's very.
I don't know. That's just part of Maya, the illusion, right? Of just being totally lost in it. And especially how much we pride ourselves on intelligence. And yet, seen through this lens, society is just, people just trip over themselves. It's such a paradox, right? People
Yeah.
go to such great lengths to try to make themselves happier, but they're really only laying more groundwork for suffering by trying to like cling and crave and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy
It's
stuff.
so yeah. It's so interesting. Your if you want to be happy, you have to like have the more attention you can bring from other people onto you, the more value you have in the society, right? And the more happier that you think you can be, right? Like let's say talk about money. The more money, because money is like a you're exchanging currency for like a person's attention, awareness. I feel like money like commercializes awareness in a very abstract way if I stretch it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this gets into the 10,000 things a bit, right? Because you can have all kinds of ideas about what makes you happy, but at the end of the day, those are all just ideas. Like we said, ideas are fixed, constant, stable things that don't really represent reality at all, not in any accurate way. Um,
Yeah,
so no matter you fill in the blank about X, Y, and Z will make me happy, it's still the same trap. I mean, it could vary in how much harm it causes yourself and other people, but it's the same basic formula that like I'm going out there to go get something to fix what's in here. You know?
I feel ideas. I think there's like a illusion where you convince yourself that these ideas are more real than this real experience right here.
And that's a state we almost all live in, everyone, of like we're
Yeah,
just in our heads. That's we live in our concepts and our ideas.
Yeah.
Most people, I mean, it's taken a lot of reading and personal exploration to even see the daylight between your ideas representing reality
Yeah.
and reality itself. You try to
Yeah.
explain to people, and it's just totally, not understood. This is what Alan Watts calls like eating the menu instead of the dinner. We're just
Yeah.
so
The
lost in
map
it.
is not the territory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The map is not the territory. But we confuse but there's like an illusion which confuses the map with the territory, At some point, some guy went, you know what, this map of New York is more real than New York itself.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
think about New York is actually more real than actual New York.
And it's such a paradox also because our ability to think abstractly has allowed the human race to become so dominant, right? And it's also what really gives you one of the most powerful things available, which is mindfulness, your ability to reflect on what's happening, which is totally absent, we infer, in animals. Being able to, I mean, animals just react, there's no choice, but we have the ability to like see our experience. And so this however we inherited this ability to think so abstractly, it gets us into so much trouble, but it's also like the way out. So it's very interesting.
I feel existence itself is like a very intelligent process. Like for this is why I don't believe in IQ or anything. Because if a person is just existing, that itself takes so much genius behind to make it happen. It's just like I can't imagine how someone could be like dumb or anything. The fact that a person is, because think about it, right? Some guy somewhere had to first separate himself with the reality, then convince himself he's separate, and then convince yourself to not uh, want this, but want something else that is not this. But that what you think this is more real than, to like have all this I feel it's a very intelligent process. I feel there's like a genius behind it.
Well, that's a different model of reality, I guess. It's just like you can point to it and see it however you want to see it, right? So is a river flowing down a mountain, is that genius or not? Seems simple, but there's a lot happening there.
Yeah.
What about like the cells doing all the millions of things that they do in your
Yeah.
body?
Yeah.
So just the smallest parts of nature can be seen as utterly mind-blowing, but that's still our minds interpreting it. Nature's just being nature, including our minds being blown. That's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we will definitely catch up later. If you guys like this interview, we'll definitely do a part two. But let's see how this goes. All right, Dave. It was a pleasure seeing you here, and we'll catch
Yeah.
up later.
As always, good talking.
Always a pleasure. I'll see you. Bye bye.
All right. See you.